So this video covers Blood Brothers from page 46 onwards. The second part of the episode in the park where the children actually arrive at the park and engage themselves in shooting at the statue. So, to begin, Mickey, Eddie and Linda are standing in line, taking it in turns to fire the air pistol. Mickey takes aim and fires. Of course, again, reference to guns, to violence, foreshadowing to later. Linda with glee missed. Edward loads and fires. Linda missed. Linda takes the gun and fires. We hear a metallic ping. She beams a satisfied smile at Mickey, but ignores it and reloads and fires. The routine is repeated with exactly the same outcome until Mickey takes the gun and says, "We're not playing with the gun no more." He puts it away. Now, dramatically significant here because we see that not only do the children play casually with guns, but Mickey is a terrible shot, something that we see later, and therefore when he does later with a single shot kill Edward, we get the sense that actually it must be fate that was involved there, because he would never have been able to do that by his own intent. In terms of Linda and the sort of role of women in this play, the sort of significance and the importance that they play in life, particularly in working class life, it's therefore significant that Linda actually does create the pain, that she does in fact actually successfully shoot. Again, I think criticising masculinity in the sense that women perhaps, actually are in a sense better equipped. Mickey then beg your pardon, now Linda then replies, why? Mickey, it gets broke if you use it too much. Bit of comedy, bit of sparse, of course, there as well. Doesn't like being beaten by a girl. Edward says, "What are we going to do now, Mickey?" Mickey, "I don't know." Linda, "I do." "What?" "Let's throw some stones through them windows." Mickey, brightening, "Ooh, I dare you, Linda, I dare you." Linda, bending for a stone, "Well, I will. I'm not scared of you. Are you ready?" Edward, he is. Look, Eddie's scared." "No, he isn't. Are you, Eddie?" Edward then stoically. Stoic means courageously. It refers to the ancient Greek concept of stoics being people who accept consequences without being frightened of them. Says, "No, I'm not scared at all, actually." Linda, "Right, when I count to 3, we all throw together. 1, 2, 3. And unseen by them, a policeman has approached behind them. The policeman, who for some reason says this very bizarre little rhyme, presumably it's meant to be that he's acting casually or pretending to act casually as he catches them, says, "Me mother caught a flea. She put it in the teapot to make a cup of tea, and what do you think you're doing?" Linda and Mickey shoot terrified glances at Edward, almost wetting themselves. And this is the kind of comedic, the sparse payoff for the earlier section in the previous video, when their pretense at bravado now crumbles. Edward, it says, then mistakes their look for encouragement, and again showing his naivety, again for comedic purposes, says, "Waiting for the 92 bus." He explodes with excited laughter. Worth noting then that actually he, of the 3 of them, is actually the one who is the most, as it were, rude, the most offensive, if you like, to the policeman, and we'll see later on how that relates to the consequences that they relieve. So the 3 children here, although they're broadly equal, they're not completely equal in terms of the actions that they're about to take, and yet Edward is the one who's treated most lightly. So we carry on. Linda says, "He's not with us." He says, "Sir." Policeman sarcastically, "No, he's definitely with us. What's your name, son?" Edward replies, further payoff, "Adolf Hitler." Edward laughs until he senses that all is not well. He sees that he alone is laughing. The laughter turns to tears, which sets the other 2 off, and we're reminded, aren't we now, that in spite of everything, in spite of the bravado, they are just children, and it's all very well playing games, but when you're confronted with reality, when you're confronted with real life and the consequences of real life, it's not quite so simple. So you can link it to that theme there. So, Edward, where are we then now? Let's see. The 3 children turn round, crying, bawling, followed by the policeman. The 3 children exit. Mrs. Johnston enters. Now, it's very important to compare these next two sections, looking at the way that the policeman treats the Johnston and treats the Lionses, because it tells us a lot about attitude to social class and society, and the stigma that follows people in the working class particularly. So, let's look at this then. The policeman says, and he was about to commit a serious crime, love. Now, do you understand that? You don't want to end up in court again, do you? Now, look at the language here. Things like serious crime, the way that that's described. Look at the reference to court again, the implication that she's no stranger to this, presumably with Sammy, to this kind of antisocial behaviour. Mrs. Johnston shakes her head. The policeman continues, well, that's what's going to happen if I have any more trouble from one of yours. I warned you last time, didn't I, Mrs. Johnston, about your Sammy? Here you are then. Mrs. Johnston nods. But again, look at the way that he talks. First of all, he talks about warning her. He talks about, that's what's going to happen. Notice the informality of it, which I think in this context denotes his lack of respect for her. Anyway, let's continue. So he goes on, well, there'll be no more bloody warnings from now on. Notice the strength then of the kind of the blaspheming language that he uses. Either you keep them in order, missus, or it'll go to courts for you, or worse, won't it? Mrs. Johnston nods. Yes, it will. As the policeman turns and goes towards the Lion's house, and music is heard. And sort of wistfully now, we hear from Mrs. Johnston, maybe someday we'll move away and start all over again in some new place where they don't know my face and nobody's heard of my name, where we can begin again, feel we can win, and then maybe. Now, what's interesting here is that there's a parallel developing between Mrs. Johnston here and Mrs. Lyons in the previous section, in the previous video, where Mrs. Lyons talks about the desire to escape the consequences through moving to another location. And we see now that Mrs. Johnston's doing a very similar thing. And to continue, the music tails off. We see the policeman confronting Mr. Lyons. The policeman has removed his helmet. He holds a glass of scotch. Edward is there. So, contrast the language of the policeman a moment ago to what he's doing now. He's removed his helmet, a sign of respect. There's a sense of deference, a key word there, D-E-F-E-R-E-N-C-E, which is to say respect for authority that the policeman has for Mr. Lyons that he clearly didn't have for Mrs. Johnston. So, what else then? And as I say, it was more of a prank, really. Again, contrast that to serious crime. A prank, really, Mr. Lyons. I just dock his pocket money, if I was you. Again, contrast that. Dock his pocket money to the court. See that he laughs, the casualness of it. I'm not sure I'd let him mix with the likes of them in the future. Perhaps we could link that to the snobbery of Mrs. Lyons' attitude. Make sure he keeps with his own kind, Mr. Lyons, as if the kind of poor and rich were sort of separate species in their own right. Well, thanks for the drink, sir. All the best, man. He's a good lad, aren't you, Adolf? Good night, sir. He replaces his helmet. So there again, the fact that he actually believes that Edward is in fact called Adolf is one final comedic payoff on the one hand, the sparse that's always underpinning this play, so that it's never just serious or entirely serious social criticism, but the fact that in spite of everything, he appears to actually believe him shows that the middle class, by their very nature, get this much more favourable ride, as it were, this much more favourable treatment from society. Once again, further evidence from Russell of inequality in society and injustices. The policeman leaves. So we'll pause that video there and we'll look at the next one later. So we'll pick this up at the very bottom of page 48 on the next video.